and how that's impacting not just sort of how she went through life, but also how she sees policy, how she sees governing in this country. I was told by a number of sources that her team was very sort of cautious on the idea of race and gender. They wanted to make sure that she was making the case that she has the qualifications and the accomplishments to be president. So that's why you saw her really leaning in on how she got to this stage, especially because, of course, she got this nomination in this untraditional way. So they wanted to make it clear that people knew that she earned this moment.
Kayla, what did America learn about Vice President Harris's policy priorities if she wins the White House?
Well, she talked about a lot of different policies.
Kayla, go ahead.
No worries. So she talked about her biography for sure, but I was really surprised about how much she shifted to talk about very serious topics. She talked about artificial intelligence. She talked about Iran, which recently attacked both the Harris and Trump campaign. And she also addressed the war in Gaza, which will have particular resonance with those 30 uncommitted delegates that were at this convention this week. So she really demonstrated how she is uniquely prepared as the vice president to take on this challenge. And I think that's why part of this speech was very sobering. She really was showing that she has the ability and the awareness of what risks are facing her in November, not just talking about joy, not just talking about her biography or her contrast with Trump, but making really an appeal to practicality, common sense, and governing. And I think she really demonstrated that, and she has the chops to show that she could do that. She has represented the U.S. on the world stage, so this is something that she's uniquely aware of.
Can you talk more about that, Yamiche, about this issue of the war in Gaza and the challenge within the party on that issue? She did have, I think, her most extensive comments to date about the fighting in the Middle East. Fill us in.
That's right. She did talk a lot about this issue, and we should note that there were protesters almost every day of the DNC related to this issue, pro-Palestinian protesters. The protests weren't as big as were expected, but she talked about the fact that she really believes in the right of Israel to defend itself, and she also talked about the fact that Palestine and Palestinian people should also have a right to exist. So take a listen to her comments.
I will always stand up for Israel's right to defend itself. President Biden and I are working to end this war such that Israel is secure, the hostages are released, the suffering in Gaza ends, and the Palestinian people can realize their right to dignity, security, freedom, and self-determination.
And she also talked about the fact that far too many innocent people have died in Gaza. So throughout her sort of the last year, she's been seen by a number of pro-Palestinian protesters and activists as more sensitive to this topic than President Biden. There was even a group, the Black Leadership Council Fund, that has actually come out. It was a group that was uncommitted to Biden, a group of black Muslims that now has decided to endorse her. So she's already getting some endorsements from groups that were withholding that support from President Biden. So it'll be interesting to see going forward how this policy changes and whether or not she sort of differentiates where she stands on things versus where President Biden stands on things. Jose.
Yeah, Kayla, I mean, here's what the vice president had to say about the kind of president she would be. Listen to that.
I will be a president who unites us around our highest aspirations, a president who leads and listens, who is realistic, practical, and has common sense, and always fights for the American people. From the courthouse to the White House, that has been my life's work.
Hey, Kayla, what do we know about how her campaign is going to try to appeal to moderates, to undecided voters, and others?
Yeah, I think we really saw her try to do that tonight. She talked about being practical. She talked about that common sense. And those are things voters really expect from their leadership. But the contrast she was really drawing there was with Donald Trump. Without naming him, Democrats really see his time in the White House as being one that was very unstable for the country, one that was very unpredictable. And she's trying to really say that without bringing him up or giving him any extra attention, saying that she will not be that kind of leader and that she's someone that they can rely on, that businesses can rely on to have a predictable environment in which to operate.
Yamiche Alcindor and Kayla Gardner, thank you both so much for being with us this morning. Really appreciate it.
And now with us to continue the conversation is Quentin Fuchs, Principal Deputy Campaign Manager for the Harris-Walz campaign. Thanks for joining us. I'm sure you got very little sleep in this whole week, really. What do the next 73, 74 days look like for the Harris campaign?
Well, first of all, good morning, and thank you for having me. I'm incredibly excited to be here, especially after last night. Over the next 74 days of the campaign, we're going to continue to get out and talk to the American people. You're going to hear more of what the vice president said last night on the stage, that she's going to be a president that represents all America. I think it's going to show in where the campaign goes. I think what the campaign is saying, the vice president is really charting a new way forward that includes all of America and is really meant to give everybody in this country a chance to succeed. I think the days of division are behind us, and I think Vice President Harris laid that out very articulately last night.
You know, Quentin, we saw some really powerful speeches. I mean, the Vice President's speech, certainly powerful. Barack and Michelle Obama, Hillary Clinton, President, Bill Clinton. Are you going to be using them on the campaign trail?
Absolutely. They're some of the best surrogates in our party, and I think some of the stories that they told, some of the encouragement that they gave American voters, Michelle Obama urging us not to be complacent, the fact that we still have more work to do, and I think the Vice President echoed that in her remarks as well. We have to make sure we are doing everything we can together, and the way we're going to do that is for folks to turn out and vote, and so I encourage folks watching to make sure they go to KamalaHarris.com to find out ways that they can join our campaign, but we are absolutely going to use all the surrogates that you heard throughout the convention over the next several months of this campaign.
You talk about all the work that's to come, so can you be more specific? As Politico pointed out this morning, Vice President Harris is still behind where Biden was at this point in the race in 2020, a race that ended up decided by just a few tens of thousands of voters in a few key states, and 5 of the last 6 elections have been decided by 5 points or less. How is the campaign preparing for what could be another very close race, and what specifically will you be doing to reach those voters that could be the deciders?
Well, look, our campaign has been building an infrastructure apparatus for months on the ground in the battleground states to make sure that we are talking to the voters who are ultimately going to decide this election. An infrastructure that is leaps and bounds above Donald Trump. We've got 1,600 staff on the ground, over 300 offices. We have to make sure that we're getting people in those offices, that they're volunteering. You're going to continue to see our principals hit the ground in these battleground states repeatedly, bus tours, making sure that we're traveling across the country. And then we're also cognizant that people can start voting as early as late September. And so that's something that's very, very important to us, to make sure we're getting in front of as many people as possible, communicating our message. We're going to continue to advertise, continue to do all the things, but we're very comfortable where our campaign is, and we're running this campaign as if we're the underdog, because we are. We still have more work to do, and nobody on this campaign, including the vice president herself, is going to be complacent.
And Quentin, Donald Trump reacted on Fox News shortly after the vice president's speech. Here's some of what he had to say.
Well, the biggest reaction is, why didn't she do the things that she's complaining about? All of these things that she talked about, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do everything, but she didn't do any of it. She could have done it 3.5 years ago.
What's your response to that?
I think it's comical. I think that Vice President Harris's record as Vice President, as Attorney General, as a DA speaks for itself. Her and President Biden created nearly 16 million jobs, capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month for seniors, passed the largest bipartisan transportation and infrastructure bill in history, and the list goes on and on. Climate. Donald Trump was a disaster for America, and the fact that he has no vision is why he continues to go back and try to make these about personal attacks. You would think that somebody who saw Vice President Harris's remarks last night after she said that she will be a president that represents all of America and that will bring us together, not divide us, that type of rhetoric from Donald Trump is exactly the contrast. He's going to continue to traffic in division because he has no vision for this country. He's going to continue to attack people because he's small. He only cares about himself, and at the end of the day, that is the fundamental stakes in this election. On one side, we have Vice President Harris and Governor Walz, who are working to bring this country together and give everyone an opportunity to not just get by, but to get ahead. And on the other side, you have Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, who only care about themselves and are only in this campaign for themselves and to get revenge on their political enemies.
Quentin, our colleague Yasmin Vasugian talked with a group of voters after the speech last night, and here's how one undecided voter reacted to what the vice president had to say about Israel and the war in Gaza.
I am committed to continuing to talk about why we need a permanent ceasefire and an arms embargo. I'm committed to, trying to do whatever I can to make sure that her team knows that, although I do believe that they do know that, and trying to get them to move on that. I'm not going to make a decision tonight. I'm not going to make a decision probably tomorrow, but this is something, it's a work in progress.
Quentin, what's the campaign doing to move that man to a yes?
Look, we're continuing to make sure that those individuals understand that Vice President Harris sees them. I think she was very clear in her remarks last night that she and President Biden are both working tirelessly for a hostage deal and a ceasefire deal to get that done, that Israel has a right to defend itself, that she is committed to making sure that Israel is able to do that, and at the same time that the suffering in Gaza must end, and that the people in the Palestinian people have a right to self-determination, and she is committed to that as well. And so we're going to continue to have conversations. We're going to continue to listen. She is going to continue to listen and make sure that that is reflected. And so we're going to continue to stay the course and make sure that those folks know that they have a place in this campaign and that Vice President Harris agrees with them, that there must be a ceasefire and there must be a hostage deal and bring the situation to a close.
It's great to talk with you. I'm wondering, because we've been all wanting to speak with the vice president herself. We know it's been a truncated start to this campaign for her as presidential candidate. But when will she sit down with the media in a one-on-one capacity and answer our questions?
I think she'll sit down on her time. Look, as you mentioned, this was a truncated time frame. We have made sure that we were getting out, talking to voters. I think people forget just how short of a time frame it has been. We had a change at the top of the ticket. We elected a brand new vice presidential nominee pick in Governor Walz. We had to host a convention, and we had to make sure that we're communicating with voters. And so there is no rest for the wicked. Our campaign is going to continue to do all the things we need to do, and Vice President Harris will make herself available to speak to the press on her time and when she's ready. And I think that we're going to continue to make sure we're communicating with voters, because at the end of the day, those are the individuals who are going to decide who is going to be the next leader in this country. And I think Vice President Harris last night in her acceptance speech made the choice very, very clear. And we're going to continue to do everything we can over the next 73 days to do the same from the campaign side.
Okay, well, we're putting in our requests now. When she's ready, we'll be here for her. Quentin Fuchs, thanks so much for joining us.
Really appreciate it. Still ahead, reaction to former President Trump's latest comments about border policy and his plan to deport millions of people if he gets back into office.
Plus, getting down to business, what both campaigns need to do in the next 74 days to win.
But first, Vice President Harris's grandnieces set the record straight and taught the nation how to say her first name properly.
Like la 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 la.
Put it together and it's 1, 2, 3, Kamala. All right, so let's practice. Let's practice.
Everybody over here say Kama. Everybody over here say La.
Together.
I own a lot of businesses, so my tech and my network need to keep up. Thank you, Verizon Business.
Now our businesses get fast and reliable internet from the same network that powers our phones.
So whatever's